Today's reading comes from Isaiah. It's a popular book during this time of year. We get it a lot in Advent, and it kind of continues through here. This in particular is a popular reading talking about the servant of God. I wonder who that might be. It starts on Isaiah 42, 1 through 9. I'm going to go to 10, just because I like 10. I feel like it. Anyways. Here is my servant, whom I uphold, my chosen, in whom my soul delights. I have put my spirit upon him. He will bring forth justice to the nations. He will not cry or lift up his voice, or make it heard in the street. A bruised reed he will not break, and a dimly burning wick he will not quench. He will faithfully bring forth justice. He will not grow faint or be crushed until he has established justice in the earth, and the coastlands wait for his teaching. Thus says God the Lord, who created the heavens and stretched them out, who spread out the earth and what comes from it, who gives breath to the people upon it, and spirit to those who walk in it. I am the Lord. I have called you in righteousness. I have taken you by the hand and kept you. I have given you as a covenant to the people, a light to the nations, to open the eyes that are blind, to bring out the prisoners from the dungeon, from the prison those who sit in darkness. I am the Lord, that is my name. My glory I give to no other, nor my praise to idols. See, the former things have come to pass, and new things I now declare. Before they spring forth, I tell you of them. Sing to the Lord a new song, his praise from the end of the earth. Let the sea roar and all that fills it, the coastlands and their inhabitants. So, we've talked a little bit about Isaiah, right? First Isaiah, the beginning parts of Isaiah are written prior to Assyria kind of coming through, conquering everything, and then Babylon. Isaiah, the book, is in 3 parts, and they didn't conveniently put page breaks between them. But it's pretty clear that it's not all one contiguous text. It's a chunk, and then another chunk added on, and then another chunk added on. So the majority of it, 1 through 39, is what we call First Isaiah. And then this chunk comes from what we refer to as Second Isaiah in academic biblical literature circles. And Second Isaiah comes from the period where they are probably in Babylon, quite possibly the very end of Babylon's existence when they're conquered by Cyrus the Great of Persia. And so pretty much all of this second chunk of Isaiah is talking about the end of their captivity and their return home. It's sort of a message from the author, from the school of Isaiah, saying, look, we said from the beginning this stuff was going to happen. We have Jeremiah. We knew that bad stuff was coming. Now the captives get to go free, and we can return home to restore things to the way they were supposed to be. So that is Second Isaiah, where this comes from. There is a third part. I'll get to that in a second because it matters. There's 2 main words that show up repeatedly here in Hebrew. The first is mishpat, which is the word that's translated as justice and kind of that collection of ideas around justice. And mishpat is ultimately about trying to achieve some kind of balance. It's about saying that things are out and need to be rebalanced. So for the author's sake, these people were all stolen and put in prison. And in order to enact justice, in order to level things out again, they need to be able to go back home. Mishpat works just fine in pretty conventional understandings of justice, making sure everyone has what they deserve. So when it talks about justice between the nations that will be achieved, well, one nation went and stole another one, right? Babylon. So now, in order to establish justice, they have to be returned. The other word that comes up, not as often in this, but acts as sort of a focal point for this chunk of reading, is tzaddik. And tzaddik is the word translated as righteousness, but I feel like that word means something slightly different in English. Think of it as the counterpart to justice. When justice is enacted, it is enacted to make things right, correct. The proper relationship between things, the proper balance of things, that is tzaddik. That is rightness. I think we get rid of the us, the right to usness. I think it has a better feel to it for the way we usually use these words. And so the purpose of mishpat, the purpose of justice, is to re-achieve a state of tzaddik, of rightness of things. So, the problem in all of this, for Isaiah, for the people involved in this text, the people who are hearing this in Babylon, is that the land that they left wasn't empty. It's not like Babylon just took every person from this entire territory and brought them, and they're all coming back to their empty houses, right? And unplanted fields. People were left there. More people were brought there. This land is full, and it is still being farmed, and there are still shopkeepers, and there are still inhabitants. So now, those people who had had 70 years or so to achieve a kind of tzaddik for themselves, a kind of homeostasis. I have my house and my field and my family. All of a sudden, thousands and thousands and thousands of people, for the sake of enacting justice, are coming back to their homes and lands, and they have people in them who aren't there unjustly. This is where it all gets complicated. And this is what 3rd Isaiah is about. The last few chunks of Isaiah are talking about that struggle of trying to figure out how to achieve justice and rightness for these conflicting groups. Yes? Yeah. Oh, I'd say there's some overlaps. It's kind of like human history. It goes in these fun little cycles. And when you look at history, it gives you a better appreciation sometimes of how the world still works, because we don't change very much. But that is exactly it. They went back, but there were already people living there. So the whole end of Isaiah is the struggle to try and apply judgment, justice, right, to a situation where rightness for one group is injustice for another, and vice versa. And the problem, the answer to that is there's no good answer. They struggled with it for decades, centuries, sort of still, 2,500 years later in different ways. It's hard. And the part of the reason that it's hard, and this is why I love the former things, have come to pass. Something new is coming, as the text says. The problem is that there's always something new coming, that the world constantly changes. No matter how hard we try to maintain something, tzaddik, rightness, is always a fluid idea because everything is always changing for everyone. Situation's never the same. So there is no absolute stable, this is the right way to do everything all the time. Even for God, who at the end of this, and the reason why I wanted to add on 10 says, so sing a new song. We have all of that before this. And not that it's all exactly in chronological order, but the law is in there. And most of this comes before most of this. All of this, right, is God establishing how things are supposed to be done in the land and all of this. And now they come back and God's like, oh, former things have come to pass, new things I now declare. And then we get a little bit ahead, right? Here's the Jesus chunk of the Bible. And once again, old things have gone, new things come to pass. It changes. The same principles might be involved, the concept of mishpat and tzaddik as concepts, trying to achieve some kind of balance, trying to figure out the right relationship. Those things are still there. God still desperately wants justice, mercy, rightness. But what that looks like day by day, that changes. And that's hard for all of us as a species. But that's the way it's always been. And it's interesting so how do I want to? Do you know that pews weren't common in churches until the 1700s? You ever think about churches without pews? There was an entire denomination that formed in the 1700s that said pews in churches should be for everyone. A lot of churches had just a couple, and you could pay basically to rent pews so you could sit for church, because everyone would just stand and move around and whatnot. There was a whole denomination that started saying, no, people shouldn't have to pay to sit down in their churches. We'll give them all pews. And so for the last 200-ish years, churches are full of pews. That is a tenth of the time of the church. And now it's weird to think of churches without pews, right? For the most part. There's the newer ones where it's like folding chairs and stuff. But just in terms of kind of our general understanding, things change because we're always responding to new challenges and new realities and new environments. So the point here is that we are all called individually, collectively, to working out what it means to apply judgment, justice, mishpat, to use our brains to try to establish and return things to some kind of appropriate balance for ourselves. And that's not going to look the same as any balance before that, because we got to sing a new song. We're not called necessarily individually to judge between nations, right? We will not achieve world peace here. That is not our job. That is not my job. But we are called to establish tzaddik, rightness, balance between ourselves as individuals and as a group. And that means exercising our judgment, our sense of justice, our mishpat, as best as we are able. And I imagine we will be doing that individually and collectively here for a little while now, while we figure out what that looks like. Just like they spent hundreds or thousands of years. And once we get to some kind of homeostasis, then it gets to change again. Yay. That's life. Let's have fun with it. Let's make the most of it. Let's enjoy it, because it's meant to be enjoyed. The struggle is real, but so are the rewards for all of us. Amen.